Hey everybody, Jimmy with the Triple C Collective, and
Collin here.
And we are ready to bring you some more comics off the spinner rack here.
Thanks for tuning in. Happy Halloween. We've got some we got a super spooky episode lined up here, and we're going to give you our top 10 horror comics, not necessarily in any order here. We just picked 5 each, and we're going to go down the list here for you, and we're going to share some of our favorites. We're going to tell you what makes them stand out in the genre, whether it's comic book genre or just horror genre in general. And whether you're a diehard horror fan or you just want to get into the spooky spirit, we got you covered. So
hope you brought your brown pants because it's about to get spooky up in here. And so, Collin, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into your first recommendation here.
All right, number 10. We're going to go with Witches by Scott Snyder. And artist Jock. So Witches is a horror comic book series. It's written by Scott Snyder, like I said. Art by Jock, which is he's a great comic. His comics are his art is otherworldly. It's
both are great.
Yeah,
both are great people.
Witches was first published by Image in 2014.
Yep.
It features like interesting twists on the witch lore. It kind of turns them into this force of nature, like a Lovecraftian phenomena, more or less. And like it's ancient, it's primal, and it's absolutely relentless in its hunt. And it's acclaimed for its psychological depth. It's richly woven mythological tapestry. It makes it stand out kinda amongst these modern horror stories that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
It's not just another slasher or something. It's like, there's violence in it, but it's deeper than that. So we get the stories. It revolves around the Rook family, particularly focus on the teenage girl named Sailor. After a traumatic event, the family kind of just moves to this small town, hoping to get the heat off them, whatever, hoping for a fresh start. However, they quickly just realize that the town harbors some dark secrets in the woods that are surrounding their home. The pacing of the story is real quick, which I appreciate, because it's like it never holds your hand. It leaves you kind of disoriented. You feel like you're being hunted alongside Sailor, especially like since it's like rooted in this family trauma and mental illness. It's got a lot going for it. And Snyder plays with the idea that fear is like this inherited primal thing again. It's not something you learn or whatever. To be afraid of these things in the woods. And through Sailor's dad Charlie, we kind of get to peek into Snyder's mind, right? Like into the parental fear that he talks about having, of not always being able to protect your children from the dark. You know what I mean? Things happen. Anyway, so Snyder uses, like I said, his experiences as a dad. Does an amazing job of mixing like that emotional weight with the psychological and visceral in-your-face terror, while Jock's art style, it really complements.
He's so good.
It complements the eerie atmosphere he sets up. It's reminiscent of the artwork in 30 Days a Night by Ben Templesmith. I don't know if you've never read that. Just throw that in there too. But Jock's use of like negative space, really like the scratchy, sharp lines that he has, and especially the red and black color scheme that he uses, it really makes the pages seem like they're bloody sometimes.
Yeah, and they're really great.
Yeah, the overall sense of dread throughout is palpable. Anyway, so I know Scott's a busy man, but he needs to get to volume 2 of Witches here.
I can at least say this. Scott Snyder is my comic book teacher. He does an online comics writing class. He's been doing it for about the last 3 years, and it's great. But in it, there is going to be, he's talked about it, it's pretty much out there, there's no like lying about it. There is a Witches animated series coming to Amazon. I do know that he has talked about the writer's room being closed on season 1, and animation is being done to some degree. So I would also assume voice work is done to some degree. Like, Scott Snyder isn't like giving us all the spoilers and details, but like anything that's been able to be public knowledge is like, he's definitely talked about it, and it's really cool about it. He's also talked about more witches coming, which is very exciting.
Love. I need it. It's a book that definitely leaves you wanting more.
Absolutely.
At the end of it. So yeah, if you're willing to wait a little while for volume 2, pick it up now and go check out Witches.
Absolutely.
So anyway, Jimmy, how about you hit us with the number 9 overall pick here?
Yeah, my choice here, my first pick is my first recommendation is Wrapped Up. I've talked about it before. I love it. It is an all ages comic. It's 10 issues. Issues 1 through 5 equal first volume. Here, issues 6 through 10 make up the second volume here. They have also then just recently put it all together in a whole wrapped up collection, which is really neat. And it's all got this new beautiful mummy wrapping. But it is a family story. And the thing that I have always loved about this is that each issue, like, you develop a relationship with all the characters. You've got Milo, who's our main guy. Like, that's who we see everything through. We've got Milo's dad, Jim, who is divorced from Mrs. Mummy, who has remarried Henry, who also has a daughter, Jill, who is now Milo's step sister. And then we have the Wizard Man from next door.
Nice.
And you know what? Reading this, each issue, yes, it's its own contained story. You could literally jump it if you end up finding a random issue off the shelf, off the spinner rack at your local comic book shop. Like, pick it up because you will be able to just dive into this world and have fun with that contained story. As you obviously read more throughout it, you learn more about them. Like,
definitely, if you got kids, definitely pick this up and read it with them because you'll enjoy it just as much.
It is a beautiful, easy way that if you are a hardcore horror fan and you've got kids, nephews, nieces, whatever in your life, and you're like, I don't know how to necessarily start them without like scarring them with like slashers or something. Like, this is a great way because
don't show them it like my uncle,
right? But like, but it's got mummies, it's got wizards, it's got zombies. Like it's got
place
everything
in that world. I love it.
Like it's got everything about it. I want to also call out the third issue here. In particular, that's called Killer Cats, or like chapter 3 of the first volume is called Killer Cats and Mummy Raps. And like you don't get many. It's great. I love the wordplay and stuff here. But the backup art, even, that's another thing about Wrapped Up, is that there are backup stories, which is something that is kind of like lost sorta on most modern comics. Like, you kind of get it a little bit in DC, where it's like you get your main story, that's your 22-page comic, and then you get this little like appendix that has to do with characters, but not necessarily directly into that story you just saw. It's just
in the world.
It's just a little aside, a little something extra, a little cherry on top, if you will. But in this issue is the first time that I see the art from Miranda Harmon, who would then go on to team up with Dave on Mayor Goodboy, the Mayor Goodboy trilogy. Yeah. And if I didn't say, the art here for all of Wrapped Up is done by Scoot McMahon. It's written by Dave Scheidt. They're friends of the pod. We've had them both on for Collected Conversations. Go check those out. Wonderful combos we had with them. And then the last issue that I wanted to like really call out is the issue 8. It's called Wizard Prison Blues, and it's a prison break story. It's like so even with all of this of like the monsters and the horror and stuff, like you also get like that fun, riling adventure stories of like a prison break thing throughout this as well. Mm-hmm. So like, again, as something for all ages, for everybody to get into it, or definitely you want a new thing to read your kid, or you want to introduce some kind of like horror and like spooky kind of themed things to your kids, Wrapped Up is the perfect entry point for it, and that is why it's my first recommendation.
Yeah.
Colin, what's your second one?
So, number 8 here on the list, we're going to go with mine is going to be Something is Killing the Children. Today we're looking at a series that it's as haunting as it is heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. James Tinian's the fourth. Mm-hmm. James Tinian, I'm just going to call him James Tinian. What are we doing here? Mm-hmm. Something is Killing the Children. If you're into monsters, secret societies, and stories that grip you by the throat from like the first page, then this is definitely the comic for you. Published in 2019 by Boom Studios. This horror comic doesn't waste time at all. you know from the title basically that it's a menacing atmosphere.
Something's killing the children.
No,
it's there.
what? No, it's dark. No, don't get it for your kids at all. This one is the opposite of Wrapped Up. So we got the town of Archer's Peak, and it is being terrorized by something nobody can see, something that's just hunting the children.
Yep.
The story follows Erica Slaughter.
Yep. She's
this like enigma of a character. She's a monster hunter who is part of this shadowy organization known as the House of Slaughter, which is the storyline that kind of, it's the slow burn compared to the immediate hot fire that like starts off the story. Like, this is the what's going on with her, what's going on with that organization, you know what I mean? So that definitely is the slower burn story that you might not like, but I loved. I thought it was very interesting. Anyway, let us know what you think. But as hooked as I was to that story, Werther Deledria's illustrations, I'm not sure if that's how you say his name, Deledera maybe.
Okay.
Were the perfect complement. Like the way he draws monsters emerging from like the void as this like abstract form. It's like a manifestation of nightmares, basically. You know what I mean? Because you can never like pinpoint it, like what that thing looks like or whatever, unless it's something you've seen in real life or whatever. He really captures something dark and like psychological that isn't in a typical monster drawing or anything we see visually. To me, that's where this like the genius kind of lies, is where like Tinian isn't just writing or like.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's not writing another Monster Hunter story. He's like, this is terror and tragedy in equal parts. He's leaving you like to not only fear the monsters in the story, but like he lets you steep in the aftermath. Actually, like we are left with funerals, like where there's empty homes. Like you see this art again, like showing the broken families, and it's much. The real horror becomes much more. It's like the loss, the grief, and like the overall hopelessness in Archer's Peak that like just takes over everything. And he's writing about this darkness and that comes when you lose somebody you love, and especially when it's a child, right? Yeah. So the town's just losing it. The monsters in a way are like a metaphor, you know, basically for the grief or like survivor's guilt that all these people have now, kind of turning against each other. You know, nothing's really going great. And Erica Slaughter might be like good at killing, right? But she's definitely always dealing with the aftermath of what she does, the fallout of every victory, and these victories definitely come at a cost. You know, it's never just like, you know, we won, they saved. It's always like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And using anyway that great mix of horror and heart. Tinian's great at it, kind of just mixing this world where you just care about the characters too, and it just begs us like, what's scarier, like that monster that is in the dark or the one hiding in plain sight? You know what I mean? But that's where I'll leave you. If you haven't checked it out, go check out Something Is Killing the Children. Yeah. And let me know in the comments what you thought of the series.
You can find all of those for Something Killing the Children for sure. You can find all of those trades in your local comic shop.
Always.
Witches you can find in your local comic shop. For Wrapped Up, you can definitely find volumes 1 or 2 in your local comic shop, or like I said, that new Total Collected edition. Or really kind of anywhere where books are sold. I would definitely say go to your local comic shop, or we're in the Chicagoland area. Also check out Bookies. They're definitely there.
Yeah, so Jimmy, hit us the next one on your list here.
So the next one on my list, I'm actually doing a little shake-up. I actually was going to do one, but now I'm doing a different one here, and I'm actually doing Little Monsters as my second recommendation here. And I'm putting it here because it comes from me originally as a recommendation. Comes to me as a recommendation from our boy Crowley. He does all of the background designs and stuff for us. You probably heard him a couple of times where I make him come on very, very against his will to give us a little voiceover every once in a while. But this is something Jeff Lemire has been one of his favorite comic book writers for like years now, and he's like, Jimmy, gotta get on the Lemire train. Come on. The getting is good. And so then he was like, but you love vampires, and I was like, yeah, Yeah, I love vampires. It's like they're one of my like favorite like monster like creatures ever. So without more going into it, this is a story written by Jeff Lemire, with the art by Dustin Nigan, and it is a vampire story about children that are, they're the only people left. So it seems like there has been an apocalypse. It might have been the vampire apocalypse that has wiped out most humans and put them onto the verge of like extinction and stuff. We don't really know.
Which would also put vampires on the verge of extinction.
Exactly. So we don't really know, but we're introduced to this wonderful group of children. We've got Rami, who is mute and non-binary. All of the other kids refer to either Rami or they, them.
Yeah.
As it, which is like really neat. But again, Rami is the oldest of them. Rami became a vampire in like, I think it's like the 1800s or something as a child. So again, it establishes that the age you turn at is the age you continue to be.
Yep.
For the rest of your life, which is common vampire lore, which is sweet. So like, I like little things like that. They're not able to go. Let me get into the rest of the kids. So you got Yu, who is a little Japanese girl, and she was turned during the aftermath of Hiroshima, which was like wild. Like all of her like backstory like that was awesome. There's Lucas, who at least through the first trade paperback, there's 2 volumes out. There's about 12 issues. The first volume is issues 1 through 6. I think the second volume is issues 7 through 12 then. And it could be 7 through 11 or 10 or whatever. But it's great.
Right.
I love it. And so Lucas is this guitar player. He's the definition of like your heartthrob and whatnot of it. You've got brothers who are just absolutely crazy. They're like the weasels from the Ice Age movies. They are Ronnie and Raymond. I call them the dynamic duo. You've got Billy, who more or less is just kind of like a pot stirrer, if I'm being honest. And then you've got Bats and Vicky, who are both kind of more or less just followers of the group. They like will give their 2 cents and stuff, but like that when somebody has a really good idea or like something that they also think is a good idea, they kind of just go with them, as opposed to doing anything else like on their own or whatever. The whole story though is drawn like colored and stuff in basically black, white, gray, and a little bit of random shades of red to either. It's very Sin City-esque in that sense of like the red only shows up really for like blood or whatever, like dripping off like them or eating from like them eating like rats and stuff. Because like in this city, because the kids, so you come to find out that there are what they call elder vampires. And the elder vampires are the ones who basically kind of gathered all these kids, brought them to this abandoned city, and they were like, stay here, we'll be back for you. When we are introduced to the kids and stuff, it's been like a century plus since these elders have come back for them. So like people like Billy are like, well, I'm kind of tired of just like playing tag and playing capture the flag and just eating like rats and stuff. I kind of want to like, I feel like if they wanted us back or if they were coming for us, they would have already done it.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know. So like
Billy,
so I mean he's not wrong during that.
After a century.
Yeah, right. So like he's really like annoyed with that. You and Lucas have this like little like romance kind of thing, and like he's just always writing songs, and she's like, oh, tell me your new song that you wrote or whatever. Or like, and she also asks a really interesting question because they've been along and at least here for a century together, and she's like, do you remember all of the songs you've written? And he's like, no, I definitely don't. And she's like, do you ever think you've written the same song twice? And it's like damn, these kids are asking the hard-hitting questions sometimes. Probably, but right, like that's such an interesting question and whatnot. So yeah, Little Monsters. They as this first trade goes through the first 6 issues. Again, Billy starts convincing them to go out. They push their limits a little bit longer. There's certain like arbitrary like rules that they have, like they can't move their sleeping places from this city and stuff. So it's like no matter however far they go, they have to get home in time to be able to sleep in their place. You see right away, like Rami is somebody who is the oldest, so like they actually get caught out and not returned home at some point. And this is where Billy then decides, hey, I'll go look for Rami, bring him home. They both stay away from their beds that night. Well, Billy and Rami both find a human man. Mm-hmm. What happens is that Rami first sees the human man and like wants nothing to do with him. Like it's just like is a mute, so doesn't communicate or anything like that. When this dude is like, hey, I can help you. We've got like a camp nearby. We're about an hour or two north of here. You know, there's like plenty of us here to like help you. You just gotta come with me, you know, like stranger danger at the same time though. So like it's really interesting like how all of that plays out with like with Rami. But at this point or whatever, this dude is like trying to climb up something, or there's like a collapse of this building basically, and he gets trapped basically like kneecaps down, shins down basically, and can't move. And he's like, kid, help me, like, you know, go call help, like, you're clearly survived, you've got to have at least one other person with you, like, go get help. So Rami then goes gets help. Nighttime comes, Rami hides. Morning comes, Rami hides, Billy hides. Nighttime comes, Billy finds the dude trapped, smells the human blood, and can't resist the temptation of having human blood for the first time ever in his life. Yeah. And so he feeds on this dude. Yeah. Rami then finds that dude's daughter who snuck behind looking for that dude. And Rami's like, don't go this way. Only bad things will happen, because they hear like the scream of the dad being like, rah, rah, and the gargles and stuff. Right. It gets pretty like Little Monsters, despite this being of vampire children, it is not a story for children. This is not like Wrapped Up where it's an all ages thing. Wrapped Up, all ages. Little Monsters, for sure mature. Like, but I would highly suggest high school or older should probably be reading this. But like either way, all of that happens. So Rami takes this girl and they start adventuring away from Billy. Billy goes, and all of the other kids except for Lucas and you go with Billy to go feed on this guy. Well, when they go to feed on this guy, one of the dude's friends, they find a walkie-talkie, and one of the dude's friends is calling him on like the walkie-talkie. And that's where Billy then realizes and the rest of the kids realize
there's more.
There's more. So let's go find the more of them. Yeah. And so that's what they do. Lucas and you stay there. Rami and the girl and the daughter come back, and they're like, all right, well, you can stay here for a little bit, but they're coming back soon. So like, we need you guys to like, you need to leave. Like, we don't care. Like, we can resist this. Like, we don't want any part of this. We need to keep distance, but like we don't want you. Like because again, the elders told them to never feed on humans. Right. And as you start seeing, once Billy and the other kids do,
it becomes impossible.
It becomes like an addiction and stuff of like they can't suppress it anymore. They find Billy and those kids find the camp. One of those campers cuts off Ronnie's head. Ronnie's dead, and he can't heal. He ain't coming back healing anymore. Like that's a fatality. So despite that, they kill the camp. One guy survives. He kidnaps Raymond then, and is like, you're going to take me to your camp, otherwise I'm going to kill you. And like eventually, and like already saw that he killed his brother, had tortured Raymond by opening up like the hatch and letting the sunlight just come on, and you see like Raymond just skin just like burned and stuff. So Billy and the rest of them get back there. You and Lucas are like, where's Ronnie? Where's Raymond? Where's Romy? Like, you were supposed to bring Romy back. Right. Like what? Despite you and Lucas knowing that Romy came back and like something else like happened, they're like, where's the rest of them? And Billy's like, well, there was an accident, and Lucas and you go off. And so like Billy and Lucas start fighting, like they get up in each other's grill, and Billy's like, wait a second. What's that? There's one here. "You're hiding one," and that's go read it.
Yeah.
That's the end of my recommendation. Little Monsters, Jeff Lemire, Dustin Nigan from Image Comics. There are 2 volumes, 2 trade paperbacks out currently. I believe Crowley is actually getting the ongoing single issues of those.
Nice.
So I believe there's like still ongoing. If not, they might just come out with another trade soon. But like, get it. It's awesome. Highly recommend it. Collin, what is your third recommendation?
My next recommendation here is Providence, which is by Alan Moore, the writer. He writes this thing, and the art is by Jason Burrows. Both stories I brought up so far definitely have been influenced by H.P. Lovecraft's mind-bending mythos, right? But my third pick, Providence, is basically a scholarly deep dive into the depths of madness in the very heart of Lovecraftian horror. Like, it's anyway, it was first published in 2015, written by Alan Moore, like I said, with the art by Jason Burrows. It is essentially Moore's magnum opus on the universe of H.P. Lovecraft. So he literally delivers a masterclass on literary depth, and like this acts as not only a prequel, but it's a sequel, and it's an overall like meta commentary. It's talking about the controversial nature of H.P. Lovecraft's work. It ties together the themes that he always brings up of forbidden knowledge and cosmic indifference and the fragility of human sanity. Like, so all those things that Lovecraft brought us are there. Moore brilliantly dissects the works of Lovecraft with surgical precision. It's just crazy. He shows the history of its influence on American literature within the story. Again, kind of being a little meta. The story follows Robert Black. He's a journalist in 1919 New York. He sets out to Providence to uncover truths behind an occult mystery, right? So, but the only thing he really ends up discovering is that some truth is more sinister than we are meant to imagine, and some truth is not meant to be found. Moore's controlled, almost clinical storytelling, again, is brilliantly matched by Jason Burrows' meticulous artwork. Unlike my first 2 picks were like more chaotic, this is very controlled and methodical artwork. It's it looks very similar to something you've seen before, for sure. It serves to ground this story, but it makes the horror much more visceral when it's presented. It makes it like the slow reveals lead to this overall sense of dread and the creeping feeling that something is terribly wrong, but you can't like quite put your finger on it. Moore uses this historical context to comment on the society that Lovecraft's from. He was part of, this early 20th century, and Moore uses that as a backdrop to like show America's roots, which are deeply entwined with this racism, xenophobia, homophobia, which leaks into Lovecraft's work, right? So the horror that is most prescient throughout Providence is the realization that although everything's connected and this and that, the universe is vast and uncaring, and sometimes the knowledge we seek only shows us how powerful how powerless we actually are, right? So the ending of this, I'm not going to tell you what happens, and I want you to check it out, but it fits perfectly with the nature of Lovecraft universe. It's definitely not going to be a flowery ending, but it ultimately doubles down on this idea that may seem like it's the truth may seem like it's lighting the way, but ultimately all roads lead to darkness. The book is definitely not for everyone. It's a difficult read. It demands you pay attention to detail, and it does not coddle the reader. It's dense storytelling, and it aims to tackle a lot at once, but it really does it beautifully if you are willing to give it the time. Alan Moore, he elevated superhero genre with his series The Watchmen, right?
Yeah. He
definitely elevates Lovecraftian horror in this to a place where it's going to be hard to top. Just once you see that truth, as the theme suggests, you can't unsee that. So, tell me what you thought of this comic if you read it in the comments, and pick it up at your local comic book store. Again, it's there. And Jimmy, hit us with the next on your list.
So the next one I had this is my little switcheroo that I did. In 2015, Colin and I had the pleasure of meeting Max Brooks at C2E2. I do want to give a shout out. I wanted to say it during my Little Monsters bit, but I'm going to say it here just because I'm talking about the meet and greet with Max Brooks. Also, Crowley and I met Jeff Lemire at Challengers Comics and Conversation in downtown Chicago. That is a great comic book shop if you ever find yourself in the Chicagoland area. Got 2 more comic shop recommendations. My local shop that I go to every week, Alternate Reality, on 111th in Mount Greenwood, right off of Kedzie there, just east of Kedzie on 111th. Great shop. Third one here, Blerds Underground. They are located in LaGrange, and all 3 of those shops are probably 3 of my favorite comic shops that I hit routinely or regularly. All of them also have great welcoming kind of kid sections and stuff. Challengers and Alternate have huge kids dedicated kid sections. Blerds Underground is just a smaller space than the other 2 spaces, but has a nice section still dedicated to kid stuff. And so it's part of the reasons why I love going there, because I can bring my daughter there and stuff.
Sure.
But Extinction Parade, and is by Max Brooks and art by Raul Caceres. And I gotta say, man, this stuff is so good. There are 2 volumes, 2 trade paperbacks of it. The first trade is the first 5 issues, and then the second trade, I believe, is issues 6 through 10 of it. And it is an amazing story. It is a story of basically vampires again. Going with a little theme here. I told you they're one of my favorite creatures, so I got a lot of vampire stories I like to recommend. This one though is okay, Little Monsters, children vampires. Great twist that I had never really seen before. Extinction Parade is the other twist of it that I've never seen before, and it is aristocratic vampires, so centuries-year-old vampires. This one, I believe, is taking place in Singapore, Malaysia, kind of somewhere out east in that way, if you will. And it is about these world-traveling vampires and stuff, and how they ignore the zombie apocalypse that is happening.
Interesting.
And slowly taking over the world over the course of... basically, we kind of get dove into it. We kind of see bits and pieces of the last 4 years of the zombies just continuing to grow and expand and expand and take
inedible
over.
Zombies.
Yeah, and exactly inedible food, but also the zombies are destroying their food.
Right.
And so, so it's how are they going to be able to do this? How are they going to be able to figure it out? And I love it. It's so good. It is.
Max Brooks is good at showing he's telling a different story under that layer of,
right.
That
the main characters we follow is Raul. It's or it might be Veru, maybe Vrauwe. Not entirely sure on the enunciation. It's Lelia, and then it's their caretaker, Renfield kind of person, Willem. And it's really funny about the character of Willem on how they on how Lelia really talks about him, of how they're basically our servants, they're our Renfields and stuff. We just call him William. He might have a different name. We don't know, don't really care and stuff. And so it's also this kind of promptness that Max Brooks is showing you of these vampires, of once people are oh, did you hear it? There is a big at one point in the first
it's not
trade,
affecting us right away.
At one point in the trade, they have a woman laid out on a table around 8 different vampires with long fingernails, just randomly making cuts into her so that blood will drain out, and they're just drinking it, and they're talking about, oh, did you see that New Delhi fell? Did you see that something happened in Europe now?
Yep.
Oh, it's so funny, isn't it? And so it's this promptness and this crassness, and you see, and then it obviously the zombie apocalypse in every zombie story is unrelenting. It goes and goes and goes until there's nobody left for it to devour. And so at basically near the end of the first trade, our leads here, but they, along with like some of their other vampire, like leftover vampire, like clansmen, basically, aristocratic house people, whatever, see their veracity in destroying an entire city full of zombies, and this dude is like laughing as he's bringing them each like a person to feed on. He's like, you did it. You did it. And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, you've declared war. And that's what the second volume is about.
Oh yeah.
And so like I'll leave it at that for Extinction Parade. Like the art on it is just like out of this world. Like it's just so good. It's so beautiful. To be fair, 2 volumes. There's supposed to be a third, but there was a stoppage of it, and I don't know what happened. It eventually, at some point, they sold the rights for a TV show that was in development, and then I haven't heard anything in about. I haven't heard anything in about like 7 years about that show, and I haven't heard anything about new comics coming out for it. But I hope we get something new soon, even if it's just like a one-off like 80-pager to tie it up, like whatever it is or something. I just hope we get an end to it because it's really great.
Yeah, it would be a shame.
It's such a great story. It's so much fun. Again, if you like vampires, if you like zombies, if you like to see the fall, if you literally
you're here, if you like those things.
It's great stuff. Like, I love it. I can't recommend it enough. It's one of my favorite. Like, rereading it now, I was like, oh man, I forgot how much I love it. Mm-hmm. Like it was one of those kind of rereads this time around. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Collin, what is your 4th pick here?
So my next one is going to be Bitterroot. It's a very fun one. It's created by David F. Walker, Chuck Brown.
Got it on the other side there too.
Yeah, and the artist Sanford Green. Anyway, like it uses the horror genre to talk about a lot of things, the supernatural elements to talk about African American history. It kind of turns monster hunting into this deeper story about race, family, survival. It was released in 2018 and published by Image. Here, I got a copy here for you. This story's, it's like the Addams Family with biting social commentary, right? So like,
yeah.
It's set in the 1920s during the Harlem Renaissance. The story follows the Sangree family, who they hunt Genu, which are monsters, but they're humans transformed into monsters by hatred, racism, and trauma turns these people into actual monsters, right? These monstrous traits eventually turn these people into monsters.
Yeah.
And Sanford Green's vibrant artwork here, it really reflects the kinetic atmosphere of the 1920s jazz renaissance, right? So like it sets that tone for the rich history, which grounds that story again by linking it with real art, literature, and music from the time, so like the world feels alive, and the fears of its characters feel very real, right? So not only is like the Sangree family fighting for their lives, but like for black identity in this world, like that's determined to take it away.
Yeah.
This world, and with all that on their shoulders, what sets them apart from other monster hunters and other stories like this is they don't want to kill the monsters. They want to cure them.
Yeah.
They actually want these monsters are twisted by hatred and violence, which is horrible, but like the family ultimately believes in redemption, and this is what makes this comic so special for me. It's those types of stories that are redemption stories are great. They're monster hunters, but they know that at the end of the day these are humans that can maybe see the light, right? So it's more of a fun adventure story with horror elements, right? It's not super scary. It's not gonna, but I wouldn't recommend it to kids for sure. It's definitely adult oriented. If you're in high school, you could give it a shot for sure. But so this is my next pick here, and Jimmy, why don't you give us the next one on our list?
All right, so my next one here, my next recommendation is it's actually quite timely. The new Hellboy movie just came out, Hellboy Crooked Man. It's out streaming and stuff. It got an international theatrical release. It unfortunately did not make it to theaters here. Nobody wanted to show it, and I don't know why, because it's actually a great horror spooky witch one.
Right.
But my recommendation is going to be Hellboy. Just in general, Hellboy is just great. But I remember back, I even talked about it a little bit in Collected Conversations episode with Dave Scheidt when we were talking about Hellboy specifically being like something that bonded he and I about it. And like, I got to make a correction on it. It was actually after Hellboy 2, when I didn't think there was going to be any more Hellboy, is when Dave was like, well, you know Hellboy is a comic, right? And it wasn't actually in between Hellboy 1 and 2. It was actually after Hellboy 2 had come out.
Nice.
And it seemed like there wasn't going to be another Hellboy with
He's
like
well,
Del Toro. He was
like that.
He was like, well, let me tell you, it's a comic.
Yeah.
And like, it was like...
Right. And the thing I do love about Hellboy is it's not like... There's definitely arcs, but like they're shorter arcs, right? So like
it does a really good job of the storytelling in like that mini series of like Hellboy is always ongoing. He's always continuing the story and stuff, but almost all of those story arcs are for the most part like a whole omnibus will be collected. I've got the library editions of it, but the library edition of Crooked Man is like library edition of Crooked Man. It's Crooked Man and other stories, and Witch Troll and other stories as well. So my recommendation here is Weird Tales, because this was my first individual Hellboy book of any kind that I bought.
Oh yeah.
And I bought it because it's it's got a great list of like writers from obviously Mike Mignola himself, John Arcudi, who did one of the stories for Savage Sword of Conan.
Nice.
That is being edited by our friend of the pod, Chris Patera and stuff. Ben Templesmith also wrote on here.
There you go.
Like Dave Stewart, or Ben Templesmith did art. Sorry, Dave Stewart, did art and stuff. Mike Mignola wrote a couple of things, did some art on it. But it's an anthology of different stories within like the Hellboy world and universe and stuff. And so for me, when I was trying to figure out where to start with Hellboy comics and stuff, like Dave did a great recommendation. Hey, they're comics, and he knew I could figure it out on my own. But I also didn't know really necessarily where to start.
Sometimes that's a big deal, yeah.
So like if you've liked those Hellboy movies in any way in any way at all, I highly suggest trying to find the Weird Tales first, because it's got a great cast of basically everyone who is involved pretty regularly with Hellboy as well.
The array of artists and writers are great.
And like, because you got the Clem Roberts, you got the Dave Stewarts, and Mike Mignola. Those three guys have done probably more Hellboy together than like almost any other team with like Mike Mignola. But there's plenty of other people like Sean Alexander and stuff who have done a ton of... There's all kinds of people who have been involved with like Hellboy. Even John Byrne helped like write the original like Hellboy stories. Like it's great. Like listen to Drawing Monsters, the documentary about Mike Mignola. He talks about that. That's also out on streaming and stuff. Hellboy, Weird Tales, anthology, a bunch of stories in the Hellboy universe. I highly recommend it. I think you really got to do it. It's great.
Yeah, check it out.
Start there.
I love that too. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. For my next pick, it's gonna be number 2. It's gonna be the second to last. You get the next one. Is Junji Ito's Frankenstein. So it's a bit of a departure from the rest of my other picks today, since it's a manga. But it is a straight adaptation of Mary Shelley's Gothic masterpiece.
Nice.
It is just Junji Ito's unmistakable style as he masterfully and faithfully retells her original novel while cranking the horror up to 11. He it's the Frankenstein you know and love, told through the lens of this Japanese horror icon, right? Ito walks the tightrope between fresh and familiar. Like I said, he's retelling the story, but his disturbing visuals are unforgettable. Everything you would hope for and expect from Ito. the detailing of the process shows how obsessed and psychotic this Dr. Frankenstein is. It really, the atmosphere makes you feel weird for even like observing this grotesque creation he's bringing to life. It's great. This the subtext in this is just insane. It's not mentioned. If it isn't mentioned through the dialogue directly, he perfectly encapsulates it by the artwork by itself. Like whether it's showing Victor Frankenstein's obsession or his like guilt that he ultimately ends up having. Ito uses every single line in the artwork to tell this story as the consequences of Victor's actions, become more and more clear and come back to haunt him. Ito does this extraordinary job of showing how unnatural this creature is, while also reminding us like the most terrifying part of it is like the fact that how human it actually is. Like it's actually still human. You know what I mean? It's like when you see a dog do something and you're like, wait a second, that's weirdly human. It's a sad realization that you come to. So just definitely make sure to check out Junji Ito's work anyway. But if you're going to check out his work and you haven't already and you're not really even into manga yet, check this one out because it's a retelling of a classic like literature from the Western world, right? So why don't we jump to Jimmy's number one and his special shout out here.
Yeah. So my special shout out is also Frankenstein, but it is the ongoing Frankenstein issues from the Universal Monsters, specifically from Image Comic. These ones, Michael Walsh is writing and doing the art and stuff. These are both of his covers for it. So Skybound and Image and Kirkman and stuff got the rights to Universal Monsters. James Tynion the Fourth already collected edition of Dracula. Great stuff. I highly suggest reading all of the Universal Monster stuff. I am specifically saying Frankenstein right now because this was September's issue. This is October's issue. They are right now still running and still out there. You can go add these to your pull list at your local comic shop and get caught up. The Dracula will be sitting on the hardcover section of your comic book shop. They've also released Creature of the Black Lagoon. Hardcover edition comes out basically, I think, like today on Halloween. Might be next week on November 4th. Might be that week. I forget exactly. But either way, I have it on pre-order. So when I go to my local comic shop, I'll be able to get it. It'll be there for me. But highly recommend Frankenstein. It's so good. It's such a classic story. This is awesome because each issue is telling a different story of the body part. A body part. So it's a great idea. It's a great concept. We meet a couple of new people, but the new people we meet don't feel forced or stupid or like just additive for like just BS. It works.
Right. It adds to the story. Which is all that matters.
It works and stuff. So like I highly recommend that, Frankenstein, one of our number one monsters, like these are two different renditions of it that Colin and I have. Again, Crowley was another one for me who was like, no, dog, we need to get this on our weekly pickup of like Frankenstein and stuff. So and like I love it. I'm glad it was because he was right. He was right that we did it because it's my last recommendation here. I don't know, man. Do we got anything else here? We ready to wrap up?
No, let's wrap up, man.
Okay.
I think, it's time to get out of here.
Yeah, right. I am Jimmy with the Triple C Collective.
And I'm Colin.
We hope you all stay safe. Please like and subscribe to our video and to our channel. And
happy Halloween! Yeah.